The regularly scheduled city council meeting for Monday, June 17, 2024. My name is Mark Clark, the mayor. I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Clark,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear,
Here.
Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Neal,
Present.
Councilmember Mortensen,
Here.
Councilmember Crabtree,
Here.
Councilmember Delaney.
Present.
All right, next item on the agenda is audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address city council on any item that is not on the agenda or of a public hearing? If so, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. All right, seeing none. All right, next item, approval of the agenda. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor Clark.
All right, if there's no changes to the agenda, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agenda. Second.
A motion, a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, consent agenda. Item number 1, approval of the June 4th, 2024 City Council meeting minutes.
I move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
A motion, a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, awards and recognitions, Yard of the Month. The first one that we have is for the June 2024 Yard of the Month Award presented to Miles and Lynn Chevala at 3204 Cody Avenue, and I understand that they're not in attendance this evening, so we will make sure that they get their certificates and yard sign and gift card. The next one is for the Beautifully Landscaped Business Award. This is our first one I think we've ever done, and it's going to Quick Trip. So I understand there's a representative from Quick Trip here to accept the award. All right, come on up and we'll get a picture with you. Next item on the agenda, new business, item number 4, public hearing, consideration of ordinance number 822-24, rezoning from the R1 low density residential and R2 medium density residential zone districts to the I2 medium industrial zone district for 239 35th Street. First reading. I'll open the public hearing. We'll hear from staff.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Michael Hall, City Planning with Community Development Department. Just wanted to let you know before we begin this, I've received word from the applicant probably 3 hours or so ago that he had some unexpected travel arrangements, so he's not able to make it tonight. So he looked to you all to decide if you wanted to move forward or to continue it on. For reference, it was not contentious in any way, but for your consideration.
I would prefer to wait till they can be here.
I would prefer to hear from the applicant.
Okay. It sounds like we're going to continue this to another time. Majority of the council would like to wait till the applicant's available to be participating on that.
Okay.
Do we anticipate when that might be?
Didn't indicate when he'd return.
Okay.
So.
Can we continue the public hearing to probably the first meeting in July? Do you think
July
that might
2nd.
be July 2nd? And if we need to, we can push it back in.
Yeah, you can certainly move to continue it to July 2nd. The only thing I would suggest is that you do it on the record and you ask if there's anyone here tonight that came to speak on it so that they have a chance to comment if they came.
Great, thank you. Because it's the public hearing, I ask if there's anybody in the audience that was here to speak for or against it. If so, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we will continue the public hearing and I would entertain a motion.
I move to continue the public hearing that is under consideration until July 2nd.
Second.
I have a I'll say the ordinance number there. I have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing for consideration of ordinance number 822-24 to the July 2nd, 2024 City Council meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, we'll continue that to July 2nd.
Thank you.
All right, next item. Item number 5, public hearing, consideration of resolution number 08-2024 for the preliminary plan for the Freedom Gateway major subdivision located south of and adjacent to 37th Street and east of and adjacent to 47th Avenue. We'll hear from staff. And I will open up the public hearing.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Michael Hall, City Planner, Community Development Department. For your consideration is the resolution for approval of a preliminary plan for the Freedom Gateway major subdivision. The property is owned by Vector Development, LLC, who is present tonight. The site is located south of and adjacent to 37th Street and east of and adjacent to 47th Avenue or Arrowhead Drive. The site is approximately 37.5 acres and is comprised of a single parcel. As stated, the applicant is requesting a preliminary plan for a major subdivision, including commercial, residential, and open space uses. This is the first step of the two-part major subdivision process. Final platting will be accomplished by a single or multiple final plat applications corresponding to unique development filings to be determined at a future date. Per the preliminary plan narrative, just for reference, 2 filings are currently anticipated, although that may change based off market demand. This subdivision, known as Freedom Gateway, proposes 84 single-family residential lots and 27 multifamily lots. Each of those multifamily lots is intended for a duplex, equating to 54 duplex units for a total residential count of 138 units. This accounts to a gross density of approximately 4.9 dwelling units per acre in the residential area and an estimated population of 414 people. 2 commercial lots are proposed to support future service and retail pad sites. These commercial lots will likely be replatted into 5 lots at a later date per the specifications of future end commercial users. The residential portion of the development is approximately 27.9 acres or 75% of the land area, and the commercial portion is the inverse, being about 9.5 acres or 25% of the land area. These land use areas correspond to the recently approved rezoning plat tracts, which were approved by City Council in 2023. Access in the subdivision will be off 37th Street and Arrowhead Drive. A potential proposed future alignment of Prairie View Drive will border the northeastern portion of the site, where another access connection is proposed. And several substreets are proposed, anticipated to connect to future development to the south and the east. This subdivision proposes approximately 6.6 acres of open space, or 17.7% of the land area, specifically a mini park and community walking trail, which is part of the overall Evans Trail along the Ashcroft Draw. And a private detention pond will serve the development. Directing your attention to the screen, this map shows the area zoning and properties in the vicinity. The subject site is outlined in blue. The surrounding properties are made up of a variety of land uses. To the north is the Tuscany and Wild Horse neighborhoods, and the unbuilt Saddleback development being immediately to the north, where it's green and PUD. To the east is agricultural land, expected to contain additional residential neighborhoods in the future and potentially the high school site. Beyond, further to the east is Liberty Draw subdivision. To the south is the Ashcroft Draw and unincorporated lands consisting of rural residential properties and the Hill and Park subdivision. And to the west is unincorporated Arrowhead Reservoir and Arrowhead subdivision, which are zoned agricultural in Weld County. This map shows the current dual zoning of the property as recently approved and recorded. C3 or regional commercial is located on the north and R3 high density residential to the south. And the preliminary plan layout matches this zoning plat. This is a zoomed in portion of the current Evans future land use map. The map designates the site for commercial land uses as shown in pink. This designation supports the proposed commercial area adjacent to 37th Street. However, the remainder of the parcel is proposed for residential uses. And I'll note that although this is not consistent with the future land use map, the proposal aligns with the intent of the master plan as detailed in the staff report. And furthermore, the subdivision accurately reflects the recently adopted zoning amendment approved by City Council, which in effect supersedes the future land use map for that specific purpose. Also to mention, the intersection of 37th Street and 47th or Arrowhead Drive is designated as a community commercial centered on the master plan, and this development helps realize that goal. So again, the commercial will be pushed towards the north side of the development corresponding to that zoning plat. This is a view of the aerial of the site. The site has no improved structures. It's currently vacant farm ground and contains natural areas along the southwestern border. You can see some of the features labeled for reference. This is a view of the existing flood hazard. You can see none impacts this property. This is the draft lot layout as submitted in the application materials. If this application is approved by City Council, the preliminary plan set, which includes this sheet, will be included as an exhibit in the City Council resolution. For reference, the northern residential area shown in white is anticipated to be filing 1. In the southern, in light gray, would be filing 2. You can kind of see that distinction right there, with filing 1 more towards the north and filing 2 towards the south, again, subject to change. The area on the left of the map within the red square is zoomed in on the right side. This shows the level of landscaping planning that is currently being considered at this point of the preliminary plan. Visible on the right is both the proposed mini park of around 1.3 acres and significant landscaping buffering between the commercial and residential lots, and along the internal roadway and along the proposed alignment of Prairie View Drive, which is not yet built, but is potentially right in that area. This slide shows the proposed architectural concept for the single-family residences being a modern French provincial style with a high degree of uniformity and identity. And this slide shows an example of one of the detached home model floor plans and elevation renderings. From review of the residential development standards of the code, the initial versions are compliant. That would be reviewed further during a final plan application when we're looking at the actual model homes relative to the residential design standards, but from our initial review of what was presented, it is compliant. And this again, moving on to the other housing product type, this slide shows the proposed architectural concept for the multifamily homes. The design is consistent with the detached single-family residences and contributes to a cohesive neighborhood aesthetic. And note, this initial design shows multiple attached units. The application has been refined to only 2 units attached for the duplexes, as I mentioned. And this slide shows some of those mock-up floor plans for the townhomes. And again, these are also compliant with our residential design standards. For reference, the applicant followed the submittal and application procedures of the Evans Municipal Code. Staff and referral agencies were given an opportunity to respond to the request. Regarding mailed notice, staff sent notice to 27 surrounding property owners on April 22nd, 2024. Staff received 1 phone call and 1 email from the Lake Arrowhead Water Users Association regarding dam safety concerns. No other calls or correspondence regarding this application were received. Regarding posted notice, staff posted a sign on the property on May 13th, 2024, and published notice was included in the Greeley Tribune on May 15th, 2024. Briefly show a few slides of the property. This is looking southeast into the site from the intersection of 37th and 47th, and this is on the edge of the roundabout. From that location, this is looking south at the roundabout, down 47th. The Lake Arrowhead Reservoir is on the right side of the image, and the property in question is on the left side. From that same location, looking northwest across the roundabout into annexed lands but undeveloped. For reference, those are all zone C3. Looking directly north across the street towards the you can see the Wild Horse, apartments in the background. The foreground includes the undeveloped Saddleback project. And then this is looking east with the site on the right side down 37th Street. Regarding financials, as say, this plan proposes to add 138 dwelling units to the city of Evans. With an estimated 3 inhabitants per dwelling unit, the proposed subdivision will increase the population by approximately 414 individuals. With this larger population, the larger demand for municipal services, and according to the 2023 Annual Survey of Public Employment and Payroll by the U.S. Census Bureau, there are approximately 33.6 government employees per 1,000 inhabitants in Colorado. This addition of 414 inhabitants may necessitate 4 full-time employees, such as 1 police officer. The subdivision would also add several miles to the City of Evans transportation system, which would have to be maintained on a regular basis. However, some of these traditionally municipal roles will be filled by the homeowners association. For example, the HOA will maintain the proposed mini park, potentially reducing the need for this additional park staff. Using an estimated residential unit value of $400,000 and an estimated commercial value of $2 million per lot, excuse me, the estimated annual property taxes at full build-out would provide an additional $23,000 per year. New residents in need of goods and services and new businesses providing those goods and services would also bolster financial support through sales tax. It is the opinion of the Community Development Department and Planning Commission that this less than optimal resource expense to new tax ratio is the cost of adding additional rooftops to the city inventory, and this increase in quality housing stock is essential for attracting commercial investment in city, which over time will generate additional commercial property tax and sales tax, thus justifying the expense of adding this subdivision to the city network. For reference, no metropolitan district is proposed. This will be privately financed, and there is no service plan to be reviewed by the city. The city may consider the creation of a special district in conjunction with a future final plan application to offset road maintenance and the increased demand on city services that would result from the development, so we can still revisit this time when we do the actual platting, what that demand would look like. For reference, though, no construction is authorized by the approval of this application. This is just the preliminary first step to basically get the city council's approval of the concept of the subdivision. And with any future final plat, a development agreement associated with public improvements would be presented for city council for review and approval. Staff evaluated the proposal according to the review criteria in section 18.03.030.b1 of the Evans Municipal Code. The application was found to be in compliance with the criteria, which forms the bulk of the staff report. This slide shows the long format version of the criteria as contained in the code. Boiled down, it's a bit more simplified version. In summary, they are conformance with subdivision design standards, conformance with applicable residential or non-residential standards, both which apply for this case. Design coordinates with existing adjacent development, conformance to the master plan and other plans, that the design reflects applicable zone district standards, the likelihood of being able to meet, design, construct, perform, and maintain those required improvements, that the design minimizes impact on geologic hazards, environmentally sensitive wildlife, or sensitive areas, wildlife habitat, and natural areas, and that any impacts identified by specific studies or technical reports are mitigated in logical and coordinated phasing. It is the opinion of staff that the application has demonstrated compliance with the stated review criteria. Also included in the resolution are conditions of approval that will ensure compliance with the Evans Municipal Code. Important to note, these conditions do not require upfront completion by the applicant, but are rather required to be addressed as part of a future final plat application. So should this application be approved today, there's no outright conditions that need to be done. When they submit a final plat application, these conditions would be expected to be submitted as part of that overall submittal package, because they could, again, decide not to move forward. Please note the preliminary plan will not be recorded as a standalone document for this reason, so we're anticipating to allow some type of flexibility depending when they come in this year, a couple of years from now. We want to have that built in, so they're not necessarily bound by the precepts of the preliminary plan, but the spirit of it is still retained. So that would be evaluated by planning staff. If it's not substantially compliant, we would always take it back to City Council for another preliminary plan should it not be compliant with this one. Based on this review, the Planning Commission at their hearing on May 28, 2024, unanimously voted to recommend approval to the City Council. Their approval included the addition of one condition of approval related to the coordination with the Lake Arrowhead Water Association. For reference, a representative of the Lake Arrowhead Water Association spoke at the Planning Commission hearing, emphasizing the need for proper engineering design in order to prevent flood conditions should the Arrowhead Dam breach, and regarding property maintenance, security, and trail connections. No other citizens spoke at the Planning Commission hearing. And at this time, I've concluded my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions on this application, and suggested motions are provided in the staff report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant, you said, is here as well, if
Correct.
needed. All right, so since this is a public hearing, we'll start off with questions of staff and or of the applicant, if you're here, sorry, do you have anything that you wanted to present to council or say anything? Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Go ahead.
So this one actually kind of surprised me when it showed up in the packet because I was going to ask Cody about it, but then it showed up in the packet, so figured I'd wait till now. I drive that road every day to come home from work because I live in Tuscany. Imagine my surprise when a sign came up said that there was mixed use development going in on a place that I knew wasn't zoned for it. I mean, we are here to decide whether or not that can go up. So why is Vector have the hubris to say, oh, city council's just gonna rubber stamp it and go through with it? That really frustrates me.
Understood. Yes, staff, just to respond to that, had no impact or involvement in posting of that sign. It occurred actually prior to even an application being submitted. So once we got the application in, it still was after the zoning had changed. So as far as a mixed use potential, that was correct, but there was no subdivision or platting. We're not even at the planning stage yet, for example. So that was possibly premature, but
So
again, I'm sure
we
can answer that.
already approved the zoning for this, correct?
That is correct.
Back in 2023.
Thought they might need the clarification, so.
Yeah, we approved the zoning change back in 2023 for it.
So my question has to do with the irrigation and the non-pot system. Didn't we just work out a deal for Mr. Wiedemann to have the non-pot system redone and access to that? And what's going to happen with that ditch water there?
The deal we worked out with Mr. Wiedemann is to get the water to Tract O. So we bought the pipe system that comes down from the Glick and feeds his farm as well as feeds Tract O in Tuscany. That was the deal we made with them. That Tract O water is not, technically can't service this property. So I believe the developer is still looking for non-potable water if he can get it. And I believe he's still talking to Mr. Wiedemann to see if he can use some of the water that comes to Mr. Wiedemann's farm. But I don't know what the status is of that negotiation.
Actually, the applicant's here. Maybe we can get an update from the applicant or their representative that can maybe answer that question a little bit better.
Yeah.
Good question. Good point.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. Colin Bowman, Vector Development of Loveland. If I may, I'd be happy to address the sign there.
Sure.
Yeah, and to my knowledge as well, as we did not put that sign up until after zoning, where we were approved to have commercial on the north side and residential on the back via zoning, which in our opinion is we have a certain amount of use by right to, at least project that forward. And there was no ill intent of this plan particularly being rubber stamped and moved on through, just more that we have now zoning for commercial up front and residential on the south side.
Okay.
In response to the non-pot, yes, it's obviously advantageous for us to obtain non-pot. We intend to explore every avenue with Mr. Wiedemann, or there have been potential talks with the school district taking that as well. Obviously, it is our intent, and we would like to. We will be as patient as we can to explore every avenue of gaining that non-pot and purchasing that. But Mr. Wiedemann definitely holds kind of, at this time, kind of our keys to getting that as it sits. We would also explore the option of actually retaining our own storm system and installing any pump system back to create our own non-pot, if that is, possible and engineerable, depending on the subdivision.
And where would you get that water from?
We would have to purchase shares depending on if there's enough available. Again, we had some preliminary talks with Mr. Wiedemann and the school district, who's in talk with him, in calculating that and exploring that if they have enough to sustain both our site and theirs.
So isn't it a building requirement for us now to, all new builds have non-potable water systems,
If possible.
if possible?
Yep.
Go for
There are
it.
some times where it's not practical to do so.
No, it's that we don't want to put the non-pot lines out, but we can put the potable water lines out in the sewer.
Any other additional questions?
So I do have one more question. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
If you have the map up of the proposed building site there, my question is just for public clarification on where the entrances are going to be. Is it not going to be feeding at the roundabout? Is this, that doesn't even look like the roundabout's in that picture.
It's right up there. There's the roundabout.
Okay.
So 37th and 47th.
So where are the entrances and exits?
We have one coming south here. This is proposed to line up with Saddleback. It's built with the Saddleback entrance to the north, coming down to an internal roundabout. The commercial lots are these two on the north side. And then there is a western access point off of Arrowhead Drive that's proposed. And then, so those would be two connecting to existing roadways. And then this one over here on the east, we predicated obviously on the development of Prairie View Drive right there. And then there are several stub streets for future development. And that's one of the things where the applicant is, he can certainly speak to that, is kind of caught right now. You'll notice the odd shape of the property with that notch out, and that's really not under their discretion or their purview right now to kind of control that situation. So they're leaving those options for future connections open, but that may be one of the things that would have to change based off the school district's future plans.
So does that mean we're gonna have to put a light in on 37th in front of the roundabout to get people into the subdivision?
The access on the 37th Street is the right in, right out. There's a median across the road, so they won't be able to make they won't be able to go west out of the northern exit.
So the only way to get into the subdivision if you're traveling westbound is to go through the roundabout, drop down, and then cross over east.
Yes.
Currently.
So is the roadway going into Arrowhead, is that going to be sufficient enough for this kind of traffic then?
One of the comments we made was that their traffic study has to analyze, if they need to widen Arrowhead Drive on their side to account for a southbound left turn lane into the property, and potentially a northbound acceleration lane, which is less likely. So their traffic study, when they come back with their plat, will include that information.
So my questions are going to regarding water. Okay, so I know non-pot when feasible or when practical. So your landscaping that you're possibly proposing for the subdivision, is it going to be a lot of grass? It's going to be a lot of native, or is it going to be a lot of xeriscaping? What are you looking at?
We expect a pretty healthy mix, but I would say these lots are technically on the smaller side where they absorb a good portion of those lots, where we expect xeriscaping on the individual residential lots at least as much as possible, with more normal sod and everything throughout the parks, where parks stay green and lush, but the residential absorbs most of those lots.
So the question regarding potable water, then, if they're not able to obtain potable or non-potable water and they are put on potable with the additional units and the additional, we'll just say 415 residents, what impact does that have on our cap numbers, especially with the other residential units going in? On our water cap, how much water will that add to our potable system for towards the cap?
We haven't done that analysis yet, but as we get further into the final planning, we'll have more information on what their final plans would be, based especially more detail on the landscaping. And if a deal were to come through where the high school or the school district does buy the property and they can use that non-potable water that's currently, did irrigate that water up until last year, it irrigated that farm, that non-potable, we can get it there. It's just a matter of negotiations with the party at this point.
Got it.
So as far as the cap goes, though, this year we're using a little more this year because it's been a little drier year. But we also have the ability, we got the other subdivisions, Liberty Draw for one, is entirely on non-potable at this point in time. So they're not gonna be a huge suck for getting us up close to the cap. So I don't know where Rick stands on his current analysis, because we're only through the first 2 quarters of the year. We'll probably know more by the end of August if we're gonna approach the cap, but as you know, last year, 2 years ago, we were within 100 acre feet.
Right.
Last year, we had a significant deduction, so I tend to doubt we reach the cap this year. And I think the last, I remember the projection was for us to go over the cap in 2027, or thereabouts. And if we change our water distribution within our portfolio and start using some of the Central Weld County Water District lines, that would reduce our demand at Greeley, so that would get us further away from the cap. The trick there is now to be able to connect to their lines and be able to service Evans properties with Central Weld water.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other additional questions of staff and or of the applicant?
I'm curious about the commercial side. There's a quick little blurb. Are we just focusing on rooftops of residential? Or is this a whole encapsulated unit that also we're gonna develop at the same time the commercial side of it to generate tax revenue?
It does include both. It does include both. So those 2 commercial lots up there, they're going to be platted as lots, but essentially they're tracts that are zoned for C3. And so when the developer identifies certain property or businesses that are looking to locate in this area, they would go through that site planning process with them on a per lot basis. So for the actual business. So if it's a Subway, they would work with the Subway on that process. So right now there's nothing to review from a design perspective, from where those potential access locations would look like. That would be done on individual minor plats for those 2 specific lots. So the future final plats will likely be filing 1 and 2, limited to residential areas on a larger scale, and then that the smaller ones would likely just be a replat. But there's no up to date or idea of what those might be.
Is there a timeline that we put onto the applicant to make sure that we develop the commercial side? Or is it going to become another 37th and 35th Ave that is just an empty lot for a decade?
So they have the 3 years for a final plat application, but for actually getting in tenants, once it's platted, it really just remains out there.
Okay, so it's a sales tactic at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, any other additional questions? All right, seeing none, because of the public hearing, I would ask if there's, thank you. I would ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. All right, seeing none and none, I will close the public hearing and council discussion.
I think I'm probably along the same lines as Councilmember Delaney. For me, there's just too many what ifs, and we have a lot of questions about non-pot. It's kind of in the future, we'll come up with this plan or that plan, and for me, it's a little bit too sketchy at this point in time. And also, I have to say that my personal opinion, after we've discussed how we would like to have bigger lots and more estates, and they're going to put it right up against the estates of Arrowhead, that I guess I'm a little bit dismayed that we have, and I apologize, I don't mean to be insultive, but here we are with another plan on let's cram as many houses together as we can. So without a plan on non-pot and everything, I just am not enthusiastic about this proposal at this time.
While I will agree with you on that aspect, and it's still the preliminary, they still meet the criteria as outlined in our code to allow this to move forward. I do share the concerns, but because they meet the basic outlines of our code and meet the criteria of the code, I would have a very hard time voting against it, especially when it's a preliminary and they're going to have more in it, and it meets the preliminary intent of our code. That's the only concern I have is going against the preliminary parts of our code that allow this to go forward until we get the final plats and the final resolutions coming forward, I can't without seeing good potential reasons say no to it, because it does meet the outlines and the conditions of our code. But I agree, and I share the same exact concerns that you have.
And I also agree. I agree with you, Mayor, that this is the preliminary side. I would like to see more of the commercial development. I see too many times that it's a land grab and all we're doing is putting down homes and then letting the commercial land just sit there vacant. I don't know if there's something that we can change going forward. Not in this conversation, but I want more of a comprehensive commercial plan because we're trying to generate revenue and not just have empty lots and then homes. I understand about the legacy lots, but we're in a home shortage, excuse me. So I'd like to see those homes developed, but I'd like to see more of an emphasis with a harmonious approach to also the commercial plan development.
So I wasn't going to bring this up, but kind of given the conversation we've had, the one other thing that really concerned me when I was reading this on Sunday is doesn't seem like the developer really, they were sending it in because their project narrative talks about the corner of 37th Avenue multiple times. They never have the street correct. They don't care. They're just phoning this one in because they think that they've already got it. And I think that because we don't have, I think that if they cared more, we would have had more already, even beyond going to even though this is just a preliminary thing, but they couldn't even figure out what corner they were on.
But, okay, but as an entrepreneur, I understand and I hear what you're saying, but this is a preliminary discovery, right? Typos happen.
But
37th
it's
Ave, 37th Street.
not just a typo. It's 37th Avenue and 47th Avenue. And then in access, it's located off of 37th Avenue. It's every single reference to 37th Street. They call it Avenue.
See, I don't think that should be a technical holdup. And again, we're in a preliminary, and I hear what you're saying, and I understand. And again, as a preliminary approach, this is the sticky wall that we're throwing the ideas out against, and they're developing this idea. And I don't personally want to stand in the way of economic development. And we've all, as council, have agreed upon beautification. I love the site idea. I love the new architectural design. It brings a fresh approach. Of course, I don't like the lot costs, but those are the financial times of today. But it is mixed use. I think it could have some potential, but I would like to see a better situation with the in and out to the subdivision. How are they going to do that? And the commercial side. I hear what you're saying, but I don't think that would hold up my decision. Now, on the third time, maybe.
Anyone else?
What I'm seeing is a potential another Tuscany,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like that. As Councilmember Crabtree has stated, he's been on here long enough to see that they're in Delaney, that we get a rosy picture, and then we get the housing part of it, maybe low income, or we don't get it at all because they come back and they sell it to somebody else, the project to somebody else, and they come back to the new council and say, oh, we can't do this, we need to do this or that. And all the commercial development that past councils have promised doesn't happen. And we've seen that with Tuscany since I've been on council. Here they come back saying, oh, well, let us change this to zoning to residential and not putting commercial on this corner. I'm tired of it, so.
Yeah, well, and like I said, I live right there, and I have, the closest thing I can do is drive up to Greeley to a gas station if I want something. you know, it would be very nice that the West End actually had some commercial in it.
But to Mayor Clark's argument, this meets all the criteria, so there's no reason why we should be holding this up. It does give great talking points for both staff and the developer to listen to what we're saying now, because these are the expectations that we're gonna expect to see in the future. And we've set now a benchmark of our expectations of performance, and if, at that point, if that's not met, then we can deny this or halt. So right now, as the preliminary side, I don't see any holdups because it meets all standards.
And just point of clarification, per the new land development title that was effective in January of this year, in table 18-3-1, final plats are administrative. Okay, so the final plat would not come back to the city council for review. Only the acceptance of public improvements, and then likewise site plans are also administrative. So this is the time that city council reviews the concept, the spirit, the forward of this application.
Appreciate that.
So I just wanted to say before that conversation, I was going to add that we've seen this time before, that we've been on here long enough, that it comes in preliminary, it's okayed, and then the next thing you know, it's out of our control. And
They're using the commercial to build houses.
it's just not what we thought it was going to be.
see.
So that's one thing that's we are asking. Sorry, my voice is leaving me, which is probably good for some. But it's just when we approve it now, and it just goes down to it just never comes back to us. It never ends up where we had thought that we had wanted it.
So the whole point of this, when we originally turned it over to the planning commission and turned it over to staff, was to allow the streamlining process of both commercial and residential development. Now, if that's something that we said, in order to, stop hamstringing growth and development in this community, everything did not need to become before the city council. If we want everything to come back in front of the city council, then we're going to then hamstring more growth and development, both on the retail and the commercial and the residential. If we do that, we've empowered the planning commission and the staff to abide by the code, make sure it meets our criteria of the codes, bring the preliminary to us, and if we want to make some changes to the preliminary to take that back to the developer, we can. But we've given that power and authority into the planning commission and to the staff in order to streamline development processes across the board. So if that's still a point of contention and we need to go back and change those processes, we're going to have developers both on the residential and commercial side saying, well, now it's going to, instead of taking 6 months, it's going to go back to that year and a half before it gets through council, before we say yes. So we're at that point. Yes, we've empowered staff, we've empowered the planning commission, but at the same time, there's some stuff that we can do in the preliminary to guide that. So if there's anything that we want to guide and tell, that this is the time to do it before it goes back to staff and then comes to us for the final whatever, if there's anything left, and goes out for development.
That is my understanding of the intended development process and streamlining. I would look to the attorney on this. I don't know if there's a specific option to add in a development standard that certain applications, like a final plat, would go back to city council. Possibly not, but want to put that out there. A couple other things to bring up. Yes, to confirm they have 3 years to submit a final plat application. And then when there is a denied application, they have to wait 1 year before refiling. Or if the director determines that significant changes have occurred, they can refile prior to that.
And in my position is, yes, there may be some questions, but at the end of the day, it meets the criteria outlined within our code. So if we want to make some minor tweaks to the development times, do it. But other than that, I can't say no because it meets the intent of the code, and then it's up to the staff and or the planning commission to make sure that the conditions of anything that we put on are set forth to the developer, and they include that in their plat. And like I said, I agree with everything that's said, but that is something that we need to then tell staff what they want incorporated into the development plan to the developer. That way it's, make sure it's done within their final plat and their site plan development.
I trust the staff. They're knowledgeable. They're skilled. I've just said what I have expectations of. I'm willing to take a leap of faith into our staff. I do not want to hamstring any development. I do not want any commercial development to take a year to a year and a half. We do not need to hold the hand and make the executive decision on every movement. But it does make me a little nervous that we're going to fall back into another Tuscany situation, or where just east of the Walgreens, and it took forever for that to be commercially developed. And that's important to me, is commercial development, because that's where the tax revenue is. Homes are great. I think we need them. I'm not wanting to be in the position of dictating what type of lots and what type of homes. They've done the impact analysis. They know what they're going to do as a developer. But as long as the staff knows that these are the performance expectations and they're going to be made, I have total faith in the staff. This city has a tight team of performers, and I do not want to get in the way of that. But at the same token, I do not want to see a lapse repeat of more homes and no commercial development.
I agree. Well, I think that the applicant here, and I think staff, I think you probably heard some of our concerns about what we'd like to see addressed probably in the final plat and the final project that's being put forth for them, the road, the non-pot, and making sure that commercial gets developed. I think that's pretty much the big sticking points that we have concerns on.
That's correct, Mayor. Yeah, I definitely hear all those loud and clear, and we will work with them. It is a bit tricky on the non-residential side, the commercial side. That will come down the pike when it does. And also to note, this is the first subdivision going under the new code that was recently adopted. So this really is does this process work? So, there could potentially be some reevaluation of the actual process itself on a larger scale beyond this. And then the other main thing I heard tonight was a lot of engineering kind of what ifs concerns not ironed out. One of the conditions of approval, 2F, has 1 through 5, and it is a host of engineering red line comments that have been provided by Mark and his team. So all of these items, yes, the city doesn't have straight answers on a lot of this, but every one of those will have to be provided up front with the final plat. So those, before they can even submit to us, they have to have those details ironed out. Because again, we likewise want to streamline the process, and we don't want to have to, through the process of a final plat, try to extract and pick out information. Our expectation that is submitted with the final plat application.
Right, and if they don't meet the criteria, then it gets denied by staff, and then of course, and if they want to, they can appeal it to council. That would be their next step. So if they don't address those issues, then staff will deny it, and if they appeal it to council, and that's when we would get to review it. So I trust in the staff to make sure that they're following the outlines and the conditions of approval that the planning council recommended, and I trust our planning council. They're the ones that are the experts in planning and development, and so we give them the benefit of the doubt until we see otherwise from staff, and you come back and say we had to deny it for X, Y, and Z reasons. So
understood. And again, just for transparency, the Zoning Board of Appeals would receive that appeal, which is the planning commission body.
Any other comments?
Well, based upon the fact that the city or other agencies do not have the ability to provide services or facilities non-pot, I believe that constitutes enough to, vote no on this issue until such time as that can be provided.
All right, if there's no additional comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the resolution number 08-20 or 2024 for the preliminary plan for the Freedom Gateway major subdivision located south of and adjacent to 37th Street and east of and adjacent to 47th Avenue.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 08-2024 for the preliminary plan for the Freedom Gateway major subdivision located south of and adjacent to 37th Street and east of and adjacent to 47th Avenue. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay?
Nay.
All right, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear,
Nay.
Councilmember Neal,
Nay.
Councilmember Mortensen,
Aye.
Councilmember Crabtree,
Aye.
Councilmember Delaney.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes 4-2. Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, Michael, for your work on that.
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
All right, next item on the agenda, item number 6, public hearing, consideration of ordinance number 823-24, rezoning the R1 low-density residential zone district to the RC residential commercial zone district for 4118, 4120, 4122, 4124, 4126, 4128, 4130 Idaho Street, and 4133, 4135, 4137 Denver Street. First reading. I'll open the public hearing and hear from staff.
Could staff speak up a little bit into the, I'm
Certainly.
sorry, I must be sick or going deaf.
No, certainly.
Thank you.
Amanda, could I switch the PowerPoint on that? Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Michael Hall, City Planner, Community Development Department. For your consideration is the ordinance rezoning certain property from the R1 or low density residential zone district to the RC, which is our residential commercial zone district. The property is owned by Cougar Lane LLC. The site is located north of and adjacent to 42nd Street and east of and adjacent to Idaho Street. The area of this site is approximately 0.7 acres and is comprised of 10 lots from the 1891 Evans subdivision. As stated, the applicant is requesting to rezone this site from the R1 zone district to the RC zone district. This rezoning and the allowed uses under the RC zone district are consistent and compatible with the existing surrounding land uses. Prior to any future development of the site, building permits and site planning may be required. No other land use applications are currently in process which would affect this application, the property. So again, the only application on this property is for a change of zone. The site was previously part of a minor replat application in case number 21-BLA-01, which is administrative, which sought to consolidate and reconfigure lots in order to support residential development. However, the replat was withdrawn due to public improvement costs. The proposed rezoning application is a result of both dynamic market conditions and staff recommendations for facilitating a viable and compatible infill development. To note, as part of this 2021 replat effort, the City Council did grant the right to purchase an additional 3 EQRs for infill development for a total of 6 EQRs, and this allowance remains in place at this time. The existing use of the property is currently vacant, and although currently zoned for R1, there are no homes on the subject lots. The site is defined by 3 roadways with 42nd Street to the south, Idaho Street to the west, and Denver Street to the east. The site is bisected by a 20-foot wide platted alley into 7 lots on the west side facing Idaho and 3 lots on the east side facing Denver. This map shows the existing zoning in the vicinity. The subject site is outlined in blue. Again, it looks like there's 2 parts. That's the alley running north-south. The surrounding properties are made up of a variety of land uses. The north and east are platted lots occupied by single-family residences zoned R1. To the south is the CDOT parking right facility, zone C3, which is regional commercial and PF public facilities, and platted lots occupied by single-family residences. And to the west are 2 multifamily residences, each with 4 units in a common parking lot, zone C3, regional commercial. Future uses on the site as allowed in the RC zone district are compatible with these surrounding land uses, and any impacts that would be generated would require mitigation. This is not sure why it's not showing there, but a zoomed in portion of the Evans future land use map. The map designates the site for residential urban land uses as shown in yellow. The proposed RC zone allows for a wider variety of housing types, and that's the key to this application. The RC zone district allows for a wider variety of residential housing types compared to R1, which supports the urban quality of the neighborhood and the future land use map designation. For reference, this site is right about there. I'll jump back to the previous slide so you can see that triangle space is C3. That's right here. So those lots are right about there, again, in our residential urban designation of the future land use map. This is a view of the aerial of the site. The site has no improved structures. The alley is not part of the rezoning as it is platted right of way. Again, there are 7 on the west side facing Idaho and 3 on the east facing Denver. This is the draft zoning plat submitted in the application materials. The submittal of a final rezoning plat for review and acceptance is the only condition of approval of this case. For reference, the applicant followed the submittal and application procedures of the Evans Municipal Code. Staff and referral agencies were given an opportunity to respond to the request. Surrounding property owners were sent a notice via courtesy notice via mail on May 2nd, 3 calls and 1 email with general questions about the application received. No specific concerns were expressed. Staff posted a sign on May 13th, 2024, and notice of public hearing was published in the Tribune on May 15th, 2024. Going through several slides, this is looking northeast into the site from Idaho Street. The posted sign is visible. And the property is vacant, but it does have currently disturbed dirt on it from an abandoned construction project. And you can also see nearby residences in the area. This is a similar view looking directly east now into the site from Idaho Street. This is looking north on Idaho Street with the subject lot on the east or right side of the image. And the existing multifamily buildings are located on the west side of the road adjacent to the subject site. So right here is zone C3. Currently it happens to have multifamily residential, but it is zone C3. This is looking from the site, or excuse me, from Idaho across 42nd down into the park and ride facility. This is traveling somewhat east down 42nd Street, now looking straight up the alley. Larger portion of the site here, smaller portion of the site here. And then this is looking northwest in the site from the intersection of 42nd and Denver. There are no direct financial impacts to the city as a result of this rezoning, and any future development of the site through platting and site planning will require a development agreement to be presented to City Council as applicable. Staff evaluated the proposal according to the review criteria in section 18.03.040.b of the Evans Municipal Code. The application was found to be in compliance with the criteria as detailed in the staff report and resolution. This slide shows the long format version of the criteria, which you can reference. In summary, the simplified version are that the rezoning complies with the master plan, that the rezoning is compatible with the area, that the rezoning is serviceable, and that the rezoning serves a purpose. It is the opinion of staff that the application has demonstrated compliance with the review criteria. In particular, criteria number 4 is the critical component of this application. Under the current zoning, the site is not reasonably developable due to the narrow lot width, setback requirements, and residential lot standards do not practically allow for the standard detached single-family residences, which are the smallest housing type allowed in R1. So essentially the zone district and the allowed uses in the zone district are not feasible on this property due to the size of the property. And this doesn't typically affect other R1 zone lots in the area as they are existing. And if that were the setbacks or lot width an issue, it would be legal nonconforming because these are infill. There's no practical way to build a single family residence on an R1 property with these lot dimensions. Alternatively, RC allows for a variety of housing types which are better suited for adapting to lot configurations such as row houses and duplexes, which have residential lot standards that are achievable on these actual lots. Important to reference, RC has the exact same housing types allowed as the R2 zone district. So really, R1 current going to RC, RC allows for the R2, but given the location on 42nd Collector Roadway adjacent to existing collector, the possibility for commercial is not out of the question there. So RC was the direction that the applicants selected on that. And additionally, any potential non-residential development would already be dimensionally restricted on those lots due to the small lot size, so it's unlikely that many of the potential commercial uses that are allowed in RC would even be feasible to be built on those lots. Based on this review, the Planning Commission, at their hearing on May 28th, 2024, unanimously voted to recommend approval to City Council with one condition, being that the applicant shall submit a final rezoning plat for review. And for reference, no citizens spoke at the Planning Commission hearing during the public portion of the hearing. At this time, I've concluded my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I do actually have a question real quick. So if I'm not mistaken, this land was originally, it was an R1 that was platted to hold maybe 10 residential units.
So we have a total of 14 lots out here. One of these was already built on.
Right.
So we have 7 here and 2 to the north here. These 14 lots were going to be replatted from 14 down to 11.
Okay, I had it backwards.
And
Okay.
as part of that replat process in 2021, the applicants, the replat was administrative, but they came before council to request an additional 3 EQRs above the base purchasable 3 EQRs in order to support this infill development. So that's when council, I was not the presenter at that time, but apparently that's the portion of the application that the council heard was regarding the EQRs.
So can you just maybe explain the difference between R2 and C2 just a little bit again, so for better understanding? It was a little, you said it real fast, so I was a little unclear on it.
Sure. So we have R2 and RC. We're going to RC. That is the request before you tonight. RC in Chapter 18.05. When you look at the lot creation table for residential types, the RC zone district allows for the exact same, no more, no less, as the R2 zone district for housing types. Jumping down to that here, we have, it's in table 18-5-1, residential lot standards. R2, RC are a single column. It allows for detached houses estate, detached houses standards, detached house small, multi-unit housing, such as a duplex on a single lot, row housing, and small apartments. Going to the broader land use perspective, when you're talking about a variety of land uses, specifically the commercial component, RC really is geared towards retail indoor uses and more of the community base. So it doesn't really blend or go up into the heavier commercial zone district. It really is limited to kind of a mixed use concept.
So basically the benefit is just the mixed use of it?
They have the potential for that. It could go to straight R2, but just given the proximity to Highway 85, the adjacency to 42nd Street, the adjacency to C3, there was enough for the applicant to really justify and support. Well, yes, it's likely going to be residential, but in the event it does redevelop in X number of years, the commercial zoning component for the area and the types of commercial that would be desired in that area on the neighborhood basis, the zoning is already in place to support that.
Great. And the applicant, are they here?
Correct. Yes, they're here.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
I have some questions.
The applicant's here?
Yes.
Okay.
You said up to 4 units per building. Is there, how many buildings were we looking at for these 2 sections?
So as a just information on that one, these are the 2 4-unit buildings next to the project. That was just for reference of surrounding compatibility. So this is a 4-unit and this is a 4-unit here. So these are where the existing multifamily here. There are no plans yet that have been submitted for the developer's intentions to develop these actual lots. So we have no building permits. We have, and granted, if it's site plan for duplexes, we won't get a site plan as it's a use by right in that case. But we have not seen any actual plans from the developer. They don't need them for the change of zone step.
I also have one more question, sorry.
Certainly.
How is an apartment, or if they're gonna do developing there, how is that feasible but not the homes that they had planned? Especially for feeding into city services. If the homes were not feasible, how are they showing that this, whatever they go to next with the zoning
Certainly,
is
that's an
feasible?
excellent question. That really is the crux of the entire application here. So right now in the R1 zone district, the smallest they can go to is a detached residential standard, which requires a 6,000 square foot lot. All of these lots are 3,000 square feet. So in the spirit of infill development, they had already applied several years back for the replat, withdrew that. They had already submitted a building permit, in fact, on the northernmost lot here last year. The new land development title and zoning code restrictions basically wipe that out because the setbacks required. So they were working with an architect to design very, very narrow homes. They can speak to the actual width of those, but say they were 15 feet wide. And these lots themselves are only about 25 by 120, 130 feet long. So the homes to fit on each one of those lots, their plan was to do small homes, just very narrow on each of those and like a keyboard fashion. When they got into it, we reviewed that against the new code that was adopted. It was impractical, wasn't able to be accomplished. So under the new code, I would understand or anticipate that their plan is not to build individual uses or individual units, but multifamily buildings that can cross those property lines. So the lots will just be tie-barred together, as is very common in many parts. Like this, for example, right north, that is 2 lots right there.
Right.
They're just tie-barred together. So when they go through the duplex process, multifamily process, they can tie-bar those together and then offset. So basically a lot of the setback that you would have to have in between a bunch 10 or 7 small houses can be condensed to have 2 larger buildings. So they can comply with setbacks. They can comply with the lot size, the lot width, and all of those other more dimensional features that right now they're basically at a standstill. They can't move forward under the current zoning.
So I'll discuss the historical part of the lot sizes in the discussion. But I have a question regarding the Planning Commission report. Underneath this resolution number, you have the public comment portion where one call was received from a car wash owner who was thankful because he struggled with the current zoning and insurance and couldn't sell it because of the current zoning. What are we talking about? I live in this neighborhood. What car wash?
That appears to be an error in the draft Planning Commission minutes. There was
Okay,
no one
so
that spoke on the
what
application.
comments were actually made at the Planning Commission then?
No one spoke at the Planning Commission on this application.
Okay.
The only correspondence I received were from nearby property owners, one to the south next to the Park and Ride. I believe that property was zoned R1. Yes, it was, I believe, this lot right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then this property owner right there. They both called with general questions on the application, which I answered over the telephone. And this was during the referral portion of the application, but there was no correspondence or written.
And what was their general question?
They had questions on what the notice was that they were receiving. What is the change of zone? So I explained the application and the nature of the request to them.
Okay. And so there's 2 holes currently dug there. Mm-hmm. And they've been dug there for quite some time. Mm-hmm. Why? I mean, and one of them is right up on the property line. I'd be very surprised if the neighbor's trees don't die because the roots are exposed. So why is that being, number one, allowed? And number 2, why are we not doing something about it?
On the second one, I can't quite answer that. So we had issued a building permit on the northernmost lot. That building permit was in process. They were going through the inspection process. They were in process of digging the hole and putting the foundation in when they contacted us to let's submit our next building permit. And at that time, we let them know that if that's your intention to do all of these out here, it's not going to work. So at that time, mid-building permit, they stopped the process and withdrew the application with the hole in the ground.
And so we allow them to leave the hole in the ground because there's two holes. There's another hole right north of the old house that's there.
Right in this area?
On the Denver side of the street there, that house, there is another hole dug there.
Okay. I'm not aware of a building permit on that lot.
Okay. All right, and then the rest of it is,
Do you want to address, I see the applicants here, if you want to come up to the podium, state your name and
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioner, or council members. I'm sorry, I'm a commissioner myself, so I say that often. But Brian Franzen, Cougar Lane, 111 38th Avenue, Greeley. Just to answer a couple of your questions, I think staff answered that correctly. Obviously, we've been working on this project for several years, and it's been not the easiest to get through. But the purpose of this rezone is just to find a win-win, that we can be proud of something that we put on this property, and the city of Evans can be proud of it too. The existing lots that we were going to build on, obviously we didn't love the project. We weren't happy with what we were able to build on these lots. During the last code change, we had several conversations with the prior staff that was here about setbacks and variances, and we re-engineered the walls in between the properties to fire rated those walls so that we could get a smaller setback between the two lots. That's something that we had to do per the pre-existing code before this code change. When we dug this hole and we were a day away from laying a foundation, we were notified by the city that we weren't going to be able to move forward on the lot next door. So we abandoned that, pumped the brakes pretty hard on that process, not to spend any more money on that lot. To answer your question on the holes, we're happy to fill the holes back in. We're just kind of in limbo right now as to what direction we're going to go with this project. So the second hole, I'm not sure that there's.
not sure about the two holes that are there?
Yeah.
Is
There's a fresh hole on Idaho Street that was abandoned during this process, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I do believe that there's another one dug on the north side of the house on the property line, on the north there.
On the 4117?
I can't see very well there.
so you got 41.
4117, yes.
Yeah, we don't have a hole dug there. We've never moved any dirt on that lot at all.
Okay.
Do you own that lot?
Yes.
Go ahead, Councilmember Delaney.
Mr. Hall, going back to trusting staff, I guess the one thing I still am kind of confused about is the RC versus the R2. And I know that the RC is what the developer is asking for. I'm asking, if you were sitting on this dais, do you think that RC is better than R2 in this situation?
100%. If I knew that this application was for a specific end goal, being the duplexes, which it sounds like that is their intention, R2 on most infill properties, deeper into the east side, or not in this location, would be appropriate. And for reference, we just had this pre-application meeting with the applicants in May, so this is a very fresh and quick way of getting here. But in our discussions with the applicant on this, and it's fresh in my mind, and it really stands out because we talked about the other potentials of the site in the future. And so again, the collector road status, the future land use map with the commercial right to the west there, with the C3 zoning, with the park and ride, it feels like it would be underserving to just limited RC, because there's so much, a much better potential for that. And then given the limited frequency that rezonings come in on that side of town, it was staff's support and the applicant, we kind of jointly came up with the idea of, I think that RC would be a good idea to do out here. It sets the stage for future development if and when that gets there, to limit having to go through yet another change of zone just to go from RC now to C1 or something like that. So it really was trying to also get a future angle in there.
Okay, thank you. I'm comfortable.
Any other additional questions?
Sounds like the developer's ready to move right away and He's sitting on land that,
I think we're still in the question portion of this. Sorry.
That's it. Councilmember Neal, is that your hand up or are you just?
Yep.
Okay. I keep seeing you go with the pen, so.
Questions?
Question. If, we okay this, is the developer, planning on trying to come back and do another replat to make these lots a little bit wider and more usable by current standards, or?
I think ideally we would go down the tie bar situation, maybe a zero lot line situation between two of the lots with a duplex. Our intention is residential here. A lot line adjustment or anything like that, maybe if that's what the property demanded from us, but at this point, I think we can make something work that is beautiful for the city by tie barring these lots together, and putting something that reflects the neighborhood with single-family homes, yet allows us to build on these lots as they currently are.
Well, by 1890s standards, a lot 33 feet wide was a big size for back then, but it's not now.
Correct.
Fred, there is different, I'll talk about it in a minute. There's different reasoning for the lots like that.
All right. Any other additional questions for the applicant and or staff? All right. Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, guys.
All right, because this is a public hearing, I'd ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to come speak for or against this item. If so, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and council discussion.
So I will explain the lots. I have the original plat that came with our property for the whole entire east side. My place is zoned has 250 lots on it, on the 21 acres, 22 acres. These, and you can see by the houses above here, these lots were originally created so that you had flexibility. You weren't building a house on a lot. You were buying 2, 3, 4, some 5 lots to build your home on and have it as a property. That's why you see some of them have larger lots, some of them have larger properties, some of them have smaller properties. It was not intended to have a house on a lot. I know of 2 houses on the east side that maybe are on 1 or 2 lots. So here in this case, it was supposed to have one more house on the right side, maybe 2 houses splitting the left side. That's what the intention was. Clearly through the east side, you can drive by and you can see the difference in the sizes of the homes. So what I also know from my neighbors is on the left side of this, you will see that there's apartment complexes there. Those are renters. The neighbors have had nothing but problems with renters right here and above there. So again, I have a little bit of a problem with someone coming in wanting to do apartments. These are Section 8 apartments over here, and just building something to get the most bang out of their buck. And I understand this. Anytime, I think what our building permits, by the time you put a shovel in, is probably $60,000 now. It's very hard on the east side to put a home in there and get your money back out with the cost of homes. So I understand that. But what I do know that the neighborhood does not want more apartments. And I'm worried that that's where it's gonna go with this.
So I've got something to say too. This was one of the early ones that I voted on, and I didn't know how small those lots were. They told us, if I remember correctly, back then, they were gonna put like 900 square foot houses on each one of those. And there was gonna be the parking, and we talked about parking and the houses and everything. When I actually physically went over there and saw the pieces of land and how small they were, I did not understand how they were gonna get all those houses on those small sections of land, because this does not put it in perspective for you. You guys actually have to go see it. And that's why I asked the question, how can they afford infrastructure for, you know, apartments or whatever besides houses? It's just, from what I saw, very, very limited space. And yes, I voted yes on it before I saw actually in person the land. I don't know. I personally wouldn't like my house butting up against apartments, but you know, they're all over town. I mean, there's some that butt up against my apartments. And I know it's just the way it goes, but it's very tight space.
But they're asking for a change of zone. They haven't said what
Right.
they're building there. So that's the only thing we can consider. What they decide to build there, that's their land. If they decide to build a Taco Bell there and it's zoned for a Taco Bell, they could build a Taco Bell there. If they want to build an apartment
agree.
complex
I'm
there,
just saying.
it's their land. All they're asking for is a change of zone. We don't know what's going to go there.
And that's the problem.
Well,
But we're not considering that. We can only consider the change of zone request. They can come at a later time and say, hey, and bring it through the staff and go through a process of, hey, this is what we're building here. But right now, they're asking for just a change of zone, and that's what we're considering, is do we want to change from this R2 or R1 to a C? That's what they're asking for. That's what we can only consider. We can't go, well, what if? We don't know the what if. That's up to them once they get the change of zone approved to decide, hey, what we're going to put there. Right now, the way it's zoned, they could still go put in those right there. There's tiny. It's already platted. It's ready to go for that. There's nothing we can do. They own it, but they're just asking for a change of zone.
So if that's what they're gonna put in there, then they don't need the change of zone. And that's where the skepticism is if you say, okay, we're gonna put a Taco Bell in the neighborhood,
They technically could do that
well,
if
that's
what they're
why,
zoned for.
okay, well, then that's why I'm gonna say no to the change of zone then. So that they don't put that there.
Go ahead, Councilmember Delaney. I think you had.
I was just gonna point out that, you know, obviously it's non-binding, but I think it's been pretty clear that they're anticipating putting in duplexes. They've said that multiple times.
Right.
But to your point, Mr. Mayor, we're just talking about the rezone, and, yeah. I'm being told by staff that the rezone is the only way that we're gonna get any kind of development there, and I would, again, going back to our previous conversation, I do trust staff. That's why I ended up voting yes for it.
Yep, I'm sure that's probably what they may consider doing, but right now, all I have in front of me is just a change of zone request, and that's the only thing I can consider. I can't consider a what if, you know?
Yep.
So. Anybody else, any other additional comments, thoughts? All right, if not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 823-24, rezoning certain property located at 4118, 4120, 4122, 4124, 4126, 4128, and 4130 Idaho Street, and 4133, 4135, 4137 Denver Street from the R1 Low Density Residential Zone District to the RC Residential Commercial Zone District.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve ordinance number 823-24, rezoning certain properties located at 4118, 4120, 4122, 4124, 4126, 4128, 4130 Idaho Street, and 4133, 4135, 4137 Denver Street from the R1 Low Density Residential Zone District to the RC Residential Commercial Zone District. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay?
Nay.
All right. All right, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear,
Nay.
Councilmember Neal,
Aye.
Councilmember Mortensen,
Hey,
Councilmember Crabtree,
Aye.
Councilmember Delaney.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes 4-2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, my neighbors.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
thank you.
Appreciate your time.
All right, next item, item number 7, public hearing, consideration of ordinance number 825-24, amending the 2024 budget, first reading. I'll open the public hearing and hear from staff.
Good evening, Mayor Clark, members of City Council. Next item on the agenda is consideration of an ordinance to amend your 2024 budget. This is the first request of that nature for 2024. If you will recall, at this point in the year, it's customary for us to bring this to City Council to reappropriate budget that oftentimes was approved in prior years and needs to be carried forward into this current year. Many of these items are multi-year projects or items that were either not completed fully by year end or not completed and or not paid for by year end. So we're asking you to appropriate the items that were approved in prior years. I have just a few items to discuss in a little bit more detail, but your Finance Committee did review each of these items in detail at its previous meeting. Included in your council packet tonight is the attachment A that does list every single item and the corresponding long-range plans for the affected funds. Just wanted to mention in this ordinance, some of the carry forward items in the general fund include vehicle and heavy equipment purchases that were approved in 2023. That does include police vehicles as well as an engineering truck and some of the heavy equipment that was approved for one-time use in 2023. We also have included police station site acquisition and design costs, city beautification budget, the amount of money set aside to establish the city sign shop, and then some other grants, projects, and other small items. Not showing on this slide that I did also want to point out are a few items kind of at the bottom of that attachment A on the first page that are either some new requests or previously directed items by City Council. So we did have an opportunity to get one additional replacement police vehicle, a Chevy Tahoe that was on the lot, ordered by another community, and they had changed their mind last minute. So we went ahead and grabbed that vehicle knowing we would need it, and we could be maybe one less item to be carried forward for next year's budget. We also have the police department costs to establish the K-9 unit. Council's talked about that before, wanting to bring that into our budget currently as well. We have $100,000 to clean up and remove an operations fuel tank that was stored out at operations that Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment has told us we need to have moved along. So we have budget included to do that. We have some upcoming software needs for our website and our municipal court that we'd like to get started on selecting the right vendor for this. So rather than waiting and including it in next year's budget, we'd like to start now. So these are items that will likely be carried forward, but we'd like access to the funding and approval to start that process today. And then just a couple other pieces. We have heard from the state of Colorado that we'll be receiving about $50,000 back in property tax revenue. So wanting to include that in the budget. That's part of Senate Bill 22-238 that identified some potential lost revenue for property taxes for local communities that they're refilling back to us, which is nice. And then lastly, do have an item on here for Ridge Park that you'll hear shortly, recognizing the community sponsorship from Chevron that we're receiving to help revitalize that park as well. So on this slide, you'll see fund balance for the general fund. At the end of 2024, we anticipate there to be just shy of $16 million, inclusive of all of these budget revision items. And then available of that, in excess of our 40% reserve, which is our current policy, knowing we'll move forward in 2025 budget with a less reserve restriction, and we'll put more of that money to use. So pulling that aside and any commitments that we currently have in the general fund, even with all of these items, we have $5.1 million of available fund balance. To hit on the highlights of a few other funds, in the Street and Park Impact Fund, we have a few carry forward items. The improvements at Two Rivers Parkway and 37th Street that is coming out of Street Impact. And then in the Park Impact Fund, lots of good design and construction projects there for Arrowhead Open Space and Ditch Trail, Evans Ditch Trail, Ashcroft Draw Trail, and Hunters Reserve North Park, and Tuscany Trails as well. The Conservation Trust Fund will also help to pay for the Evans Ditch Trail design. And the CIP Streets Fund has funding for 37th Street, as does a few other funds, as we've utilized many buckets of funding to accomplish a few of these large projects. The CIP Streets Fund also has carry forward for design of Trinidad Street improvements and the Evans Ditch Trail construction as well. And CIP Parks Fund, this is one item that is new and not carry forward. Staff's requesting use of the CIP Park funds to purchase 2 additional Ventrac mowers out of these funds. That would include the 2 trailers for these items and attachments. So these would be park-specific Ventrac mowers to help continue our beautification efforts of our parks. That money had been set aside after the 2013 floods to help revitalize Riverside Park and was identified to be our match for some of the grant projects there. So we'd like to continue to put that money to use now that Riverside Park is up and functional, and we've done a lot of improvements there with some of that money. And then going back to carry forward projects for the food tax and the road tax fund, both 37th Street widening improvements, as well as the completion of a traffic signal cabinet installation that was budgeted in the road tax fund. And then lastly, our 3 enterprise funds have a lot of large and small carry forward projects for different reasons. The water fund has identified the improvements along 37th Street widening, as well as construction for the Evans Ditch measurement structure, some carry forward projects in water conservation, money to purchase additional water meters as we're trying to keep ahead from all this growth, and then some other small projects. The storm drainage fund includes both the Chapel Detention Pond and the park drainage improvements that you approved at your last city council meeting. And then in terms of wastewater fund, we have the plant expansion design carrying forward, as well as replacement of the Ashcroft Draw sewer and State Street sewer design. And then I think lastly on that, annual solids handling and dewatering that you heard from staff a few months ago about wanting to establish the necessary budget to improve or to complete that project each year. We've aligned the budget with staff's request there. That rounds out the larger, more notable carry forward and new request items in this budget revision. And as I mentioned, Finance Committee did review all these and had lots of great questions and conversation about those items, but I'd be happy to answer anything else you might have tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? I don't have any questions. Councilmember Neal, question?
Why are we carrying forward the lift station? I thought we were re-engineering that.
That was the lift station construction at Highway 85 and 37th Street for that commercial project that we had approved at the end of 2023 and have not done the work for that yet.
I thought we were re-engineering it.
And we may still, there may still be some costs required to either work on the grading or figure out what the necessary improvements might be.
We are looking at an alternative of instead of spending the money on the lift station, the design of the lift station, and the operations and maintenance of the lift station. If we can regrade the site and do it for less money, that's what we're looking at as an option. So, but the money still gets spent, maybe just not all of it. The goal is to spend less. So we estimated everything, design, lift station, and operation maintenance is for 20 years was going to be, if I remember correctly, about $350,000. And if we can get the dirt and graded for $250,000, that's $100,000 we can put back in the general fund.
Or wastewater fund.
Or wastewater fund, sorry. I gotta remember, I gotta get, yeah, right.
Thank you.
So Mark, since you're still up there, we're gonna purchase the Wiedemann irrigation system for $40,000. And then, again, how is this affecting what was approved just moments ago?
We did purchase the Wiedemann irrigation system for $40,000.
Okay. It says in here also included is the one in item 1.25 to purchase the Wiedemann irrigation system for
That's
$40,000.
correct, although we've already done that as council has approved. So oftentimes these are items that we didn't have the budget carved out initially when we came to council for those budget requests. That was requested as a preliminary budget revision. So staff since purchased that, paid for it, but it's the finance side of the process to then true it up and formalize it in the budget document itself.
Sense. Thank you. Any other additional questions? All right, because it's a public hearing, I'd ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to come up and speak for or against this item. If so, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I'll close that public hearing. Any council discussion, or I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 825-24 on first reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 825-24 on first reading. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Jackie. All right, moving along, now that we're at the end of the public hearings, item number 8, consideration of using 37th Street Phase 2A budget surplus for other 37th Street related projects, and we'll hear from staff on this.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So as you know, when we awarded the contract for 37th Street Phase 2A, the contractor was the low bidder, and they're doing really well out there. They're doing a great job. They left basically $900,000 on the table between them and the next lowest bidder. Essentially, we had based on what we have encumbered to date, out of the $5+ million in our budget, we have about a $1.6 million savings. So what we're looking to get your input on this today is, as part of Phase 3, we need to underground Poudre Valley REA's electric lines on the north side of 37th between the school driveway on the west and roughly Arrowhead Drive on the east. And that cost, normally we would, for utility undergrounding like that, we would use a 1% fund. With XL, our 1% fund usually hovers around $1 million all the time. It's just money that's generated when you pay your electric bill. It goes into an account for the city of Evans. With Poudre Valley REA, the fund is a lot smaller. In fact, right now, if we extend it out 3 years, it's only $24,000. Because Poudre Valley REA has such a small customer base in Evans. Basically, they've done the design. We've worked with them to accommodate their design. We've moved some things around, and they've committed to us, if we approve this and move forward, that they'll have it undergrounded by the end of the year. On the other side of the road, Chevron or XL is also undergrounding, but Chevron is picking up that tab, so we don't have to pay for any of that. I'm still waiting on to hear the timing of that. So that the first part of the savings we'd like to use out of the 37th Street 2A is about $350,000 to pay the remainder of Poudre Valley REA's invoice. There's another piece of savings that we'd like to use. As you know, about a month ago, one of those cottonwoods in front of 37th Street got hit by lightning and is in pretty bad shape. So I called a forester friend of mine who then recommended I talk to the forester over in Greeley. Had them come over and they looked at all those trees, and they recommended that we should probably take down 6 of them pretty soon, if not right away. Luckily for us, Greeley has a system where they can reach out to their tree people, and they got us 6 quotes to do the trees, take down 6 trees and do it before the end of June, which was awesome because we were thinking we were going to open the road at the end of June, and we can't open the road when the trees are across the road. So we got a really good quote, about $12,000. So between the $350,000 and the $12,000, we'd reduce our net savings on the 37th Street 2A to around $1.2 million. So there's still money in the pot to do other things, but we'd like to hear, I'd recommend we move forward with this, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it, Mark. Any questions of staff? I think it's pretty straightforward to me, myself. Makes sense. It's good that we have some savings from that in addition to the MPO money that we received from that. That's pretty good. It's really good. Glad to see that. If there's not any questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the use of 37th Street Phase 2A surplus funds to pay for the PVREA electrical undergrounding in 37th Street Phase 3 and tree removal in 37th Street Phase 2B.
Second.
All right, I have a motion, a second, to approve the use of 37th Street Phase 2A surplus funds to pay for the, how do you say that again? I'll just say the, what is it, the Poudre Valley? Yeah. Electrical underground in 37th Street Phase 3 and tree removal in 37th Street Phase 2B. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, thank you. All right, next item number 9, consideration of Ridge Park Playground replacement. We'll hear from staff.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Ty Hamer with Parks and Rec. A little bit of background or summary to this project. Ridge Park Playground was slated for replacement in 2024. We have $350,000 budgeted in the Conservation Trust fund for that project. Initially went out and communicated with 3 different companies: Playwell, which is a playcraft design company. We talked to Game Time, and we talked to Churchich Recreation, which is Miracle Equipment. I took some designs to Cody, and that's when I learned that Chevron may be making a wonderful donation to the city of Evans. He had an idea to kind of really go big with this playground, and that's how we've gotten here today. I had a presentation, Amanda. Is it ready? Okay. So just to review kind of the conditions at Ridge Park, and I think Tammy will remember this. She actually called me, I think, maybe a week or 2 into the job and asked about these surfaces. This is surface conditions right now at Ridge Park and some safety concerns. This park playground equipment is some of our oldest and is definitely ready for replacement. Those pieces you see are due to actually equipment being removed from the pour-in-place surface and then put back in. That's why they're cut out in squares like that. Our new design is a Game Time design. It's a custom, one-of-a-kind, never before put anywhere, just for Evans. We tried to kind of mimic Evans colors. It's got a really cool ADA inclusive merry-go-round that is surface level. A wheelchair will be able to roll right onto the merry-go-round. It's pretty cool. Has 5 different slides, several towers, climbing towers, bridges, that kind of thing. And we're also going to be adding some shade and bench structures around the playground. You can see the benches with the canopies, cantilever style shade structures. They've designed the pour-in-place with our city logo running down the middle, which I think will be pretty cool. The river of the logo anyways. Just some more pictures. So this equipment, including the shade structures and the benches, we've been quoted $650,454.39. It's an Omnia contract. Omnia has done all the RFP work for us, gotten us the best possible prices. So there is no requirement to go out to bid if we choose to go this direction. I am going to go ahead and ask for, for a contingency for signage, that kind of thing. I think it would be nice to try to do some kind of thank you sponsor sign, partnership sign, and a little bit of contingency there will help with that. So with your approval tonight, we can get this ball rolling. At this point, we're looking at a start date of September, beginning of September, when they'll start removing old equipment, and hopefully a finish date in the beginning of October. We need to make a decision, try to get it done this summer. That's really all I have. If you have any questions, I'm here to try to answer.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? I just want to say a big thank you to Chevron for their gracious donation on this project. I think this playground's going to look great, and yes, I do agree. We need to do some kind of, have a contingency in there to do some kind of placard partnership. However, that will be, to thank them for them. And so I think I'm excited about this.
So is the pathway, is that existing already? Or
yes.
Are they including that?
The 2 pathways going in, all the concrete is existing. The footprint's the exact same that's there. The only thing that will change where you see the little shade structures, right now we just have benches, so we're going to have new benches and new shade structures around the playground. But the footprint is the same.
And have we received the donation check?
So as of today, we've received 250,000 out of the 350,000. So there's still 100,000 that we're waiting on from Chevron.
So we have enough in the park funds to make up for that if we don't
Yes, we do.
get that?
We do. It would take if we don't get the extra $100,000 from Chevron, then it would take a budget revision at the end of the year to make that whole. But we do have enough in the Park Impact Fund to cover that 100,000.
Okay, and, I had one more. And you said some overage for the signs. Are we gonna have our sign shop do the signs?
Yeah, we're still looking into that based on the conversation that we had at work session 2 weeks ago. So we're evaluating all of our park signage, size, fabrication methods, everything. So
I actually met with Built Right Signs again last week, and we're trying to come up with some drawings and designs for a smaller version and different materials that we might be able to do in-house.
And then you said that, we need to get this approved quickly, and you said two things, so that, number one, you could get it done this summer, and then you said the start date was September.
Yeah, due to
So-
scheduling, the equipment is custom, so it'll have to be engineered and built and delivered. As far as the installation guys go, getting on their schedule is a little bit of a crunch. And then the big weather factor is the pour in place. We're safe to do the pour in place up till about November, and then after November, when it starts getting too cold, we can't do the soft surface. It has to be a certain temperature out to do that. So I think we're okay. According to the sales rep, we're good. They would want to start September 1st.
So, my comment on this is, at work session 2 weeks ago, I was arguing for larger signs. And what I'm very excited about in this project is the pour and play with the logo in it.
Yeah, it's cool.
You can Google Maps that in 5 years and you'll be able to see, hey, that's Nevins Park. And as much as I like that on this park, I would actually consider that we maybe think about doing that on any future parks as we build them out.
That would be really cool.
Actually a great idea.
That's actually really cool.
And I still want the big signs.
So then the awnings, are they cloth or metal?
I'm sorry.
Are the awnings cloth or metal?
They're a fabric.
They're fabric, so a life expectancy of 12 months.
So I've asked that question a lot of a couple different sales reps. And
6 months.
it is some sort of miracle material. It's going to last 10 to 15 years. Some of the sales reps say we don't even have to take them down in the winter. I think you can. I don't know
Have
the
a warranty.
specifics, Jeff, but it should last a fairly long time.
So we'll have a warranty of how long on those
I
magic cloth?
I don't know the
units?
specifics. I'd have to look that up for you.
That'd be nice to know. Also, I'm all for a great playground for the kids to play on. What's our life expectancy of this project? Because $700,000 is a lot of money for a playground.
Sure. Well, the reason you want to do new play equipment when you're talking about resurfacing a playground, right, is the exact reason why that's your reason. So if you have a soft surface playground, you put soft surface around an old playground, and then all of a sudden you got to replace equipment, that's what happens, right? You have to cut out chunks fall apart. So it's a good idea to do it all at once. I would think your playground's going to last you 15, 20 years. Honestly, the playground's going to last longer than the spare parts. So from what I've witnessed in my 6-7 years of doing this, the hard part is later on in life when you need to replace a slide, that slide might not be available after 15 to 20 years because they move on to different designs, right? So it's harder to find that equipment that attaches to it. I would guess you're looking at 20-year life at least.
Except for the consumables, like ropes and
Yeah.
swings and
Some
whatever
of
child's
the
playing.
nylon climbing ropes and stuff would be different. Swings, we tend to lose to vandalism and theft more than anything.
And Ty, if I recall, the poles are powder coated
It's all powder coated.
for durability, and then the slides are like a HDPE type plastic.
If there are no additional questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion. Thank you.
I move to approve the Omnia Partners purchasing contract number 20170011134 with Game Time and Altitude Recreation for the purchase of playground equipment in the amount of $650,454.39 with a contingency of $49,545.61 to be used only with city manager approval for a total project cost of $700,000.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the Omnia Partners purchasing contract number 217001134 with Game Time and Altitude Recreation for the purchase of playground equipment in the amount of $650,454.39 with a contingency of $49,545.61 to be used only with city manager approval for a total project of $700,000. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, moving on. Item number 10, report, city manager.
Yes, Mayor, just a couple things for you here tonight. I want to remind everybody the work is currently underway to improve the reliability of traffic signals throughout the community. We're currently installing new traffic radar sensors. Work started June 12th and is expected to last through this Friday, June 21st. The second thing I have is I will be out of the office from Wednesday to Friday of this week attending the annual CML conference over in Loveland. And Mr. Mayor, that's all I've got tonight.
Great, thank you. And city attorney.
Just a couple quick ones. We were originally going to do the Water Law 101 sort of a refresher today, but then because of the change to the meetings, we're going to do it on July 2nd at 4 o'clock if anyone wants to attend. And then I will also be over at CML and out of the office this week, but available on my cell. So that's it.
Thank you. All right, next item, council discussions. Anybody have anything?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
So I just want to make sure that as a city, that we're using local resources to make purchases. I don't know how the fire district makes their purchases, but they made several purchases and did not check with local vendors, and I'm a little disappointed with that. They're buying equipment that their neighbor sells, and they're going outside of the city. And we all agree that supporting local is the biggest thing. So that's outside of our wheelhouse, but as a city, I want to make sure that we're utilizing as much as we can local resources, if it's within our power, to support local business. I wasn't too thrilled that the fire district, and that's out of our wheelhouse, but however the fire district is purchasing items, they could have easily gone to their neighbor and purchased the same thing and helped a local business instead of going elsewhere. And I don't want to see the city doing that.
Sounds good.
I guess on top of that, then my question would be, in our purchasing policy, do we have any, I can't remember what it's called, but like where you give them a 5%? Yeah, local preference. Okay. I would say to council that might be something we should look into.
Okay.
Denver, we gave people 10% if they were Denver owned.
I'm in favor of always using local if we can, and I wouldn't be opposed to looking into that at all if anybody else is in agreement with that. So, seems, yeah, seems like we have a majority that would be, so yeah, it's something we'd look into. All right, anybody else have anything? I would say thank you to all of those that were able to attend the Mayor's Town Hall. I did appreciate the turnout from the public. I did enjoy the question and answer session. It was really good to get there and talk with people and actually get to talk on them on a little bit more personal basis, and also, you know, let them know what's going on with the city. I'll probably plan to do that maybe again. We'll look at maybe the August timeframe, but we'll discuss that at a later time. So if there's nothing else for that, go to the order. I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned.